All right, guys, we're back and we're going to keep talking about this film.
Yeah, I think that's what boils down to for the reason why I'm not as keen on it in general, is because I just think it's the dark subplot. It's just not something that I would ever really normally gravitate to.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody normally gravitates towards that. So it's like when I hear you say that,
I don't know. The world's a scary place. I don't know. I wouldn't say that as a blanket statement, to be honest.
I would say most normal people.
There's some pretty sick puppies about.
Most average people would not naturally navigate towards incest storylines as like.
No, but some people like quite darker subject matter, don't they? They will specifically go and sort of pick a film out if they know it's got darker subject matter in it.
That's true.
I don't know. True. They're interested in it or whatever. Whereas I would actively stay away from stuff like that.
Yes, no, I totally get that. All you fans of Train to Busan and things like that, I totally get it. But I do agree with Carly that I typically kind of stay away from things like that too. But not when it's like hailed and celebrated of a film by most people. If a story has like an element that I'm not necessarily like happy about, like incest, because it's pretty, like, for instance, look at what was the second X-Files movie? They dealt with
oh yeah,
you know, the
Billy,
yeah, the Catholic Church and the sexual molestation of, you know, yeah, all that kind of stuff. That's something like that hit me from left field when I'm watching that movie, right? And I'm like, oh crap, Chris Carter like totally went there. This isn't an episode of TV where it sort of slid under the door, kind of in a subtext kind of way. This is like in your face, like kind of thing. And so I wouldn't have went to watch that movie because it has that in it. That would be weird. And I don't watch Chinatown because it has that element in it. But when you're dealing with a story that has super powerful characters in it, characters that are super rich, super powerful, on top of the world, control and own, you have to look at what's the worst thing that they can do that affects the 99%. Okay,
I think
all the
thing
normal
as well,
people.
though, is because this sounds silly. Like, I could watch a horror film and watch somebody getting, you know, their insides ripped out and hung up as a decoration. Doesn't bother me. But I can't watch like home invasion films because that's something that could happen in real life. And to me, that's scarier than someone running around in a mask and threatening to hack your fingers off, which is probably silly. There's probably more people that would want to hack your fingers off. But and I think that's the same issue that I have with like darker subject matter is it scares me to think what people in power can do and get away with. So something like that, having that aspect in it, is what automatically sort of makes my brain recoil and go, oh no, not liking this.
Epstein, Carly's talking about you. Oh wait, he's no longer with us. Thank God. No, I understand that. And I think that in storytelling, we need those things to shine light on them. Because those are real.
Oh, definitely.
Those are real world things that do happen. And there are very disturbing, disgusting people in this world that are opportunists. And obviously it's about money. And that's because we're living in a capitalistic society. And that's just kind of how it works. People will exploit the weaknesses of the world to capitalize on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like that's the way that you get people to change their minds.
Sure.
And open their eyes. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think that's the only, because this should tick every box of mine. And it just doesn't. And the only thing I can, on a second watch, the only thing I can kind of pick at and say that I personally do not enjoy is that aspect. But I mean, that's. And
you're not supposed to enjoy it though. Like, you know that, right?
Yeah, that's just me though. It puts, well, I know that.
I would be disturbed if you did enjoy it.
That's just kind of like, you know, like how some people can't watch films if there's blood, and some people can't watch films if there's gore, and some people will refuse to watch a film if there's a gay character. it's just a dark sort of motif for me. It just sort of taps into something that I'm scared of, and it just automatically just affects what I'm watching. And it should.
Carly, don't be.
It did.
Never mind. I was going to say something just wrong. Go ahead and continue.
Oh, God. No, we'll skim over that. Don't be saying wrong stuff.
Oh, boy. I don't know. I don't find it. I find it disturbing, sufficiently disturbing, but in a way that evokes emotion. And I'm good with that. And I think that's the purpose of it. It's what can this guy do? What's the worst thing this guy can do? To make you hate him.
Yeah.
And her father, I mean, it's horrible. It's really horrible, but it ties everything together and makes the story so much more than about water.
I think that's what makes the ending so horrific for people to swallow as well, is that.
Yeah. Right.
The daughter away. Because that's why she shoots him in the arm. Do you remember? Evelyn shoots him in the arm because he goes to grab the girl, and she's like, he's not having, doing to her what he did to me. So she shoots him in like the arm, gets in the car, and then they try and drive off, and then that's when the police shoot her. And then as she's like lying dead with one eyeball, because I think she gets shot through the eye.
Right. Leave it to you.
which a horrific shot. The evil tyrant drags her out of the car while she's screaming for her mum. And the police are all holding Jack Nicholson. And then that's when he does the final line, "Don't worry, it's Chinatown," or whatever.
Right.
And then it ends.
The first time that you watched it, what did you get from it? When you get to the end, did you piece it all together? Did it kind of make sense? Was it just too convoluted and you're like, whatever?
The first time I finished watching it, I was a bit like, eh? That's kind of the expression that, if you can imagine me sat myself going, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, but you do that over everything.
Well, yeah.
Eh?
Huh? It was a bit. I was kind of left a little bit scratching my head.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's because I think I'd tried to focus too much on all the red herrings and not actually really paid that much attention. So I was like, I'm a little bit, hold on a second. And I was trying to go back through it in my brain. And then that's when I think you messaged me. Literally, when I was sat there looking confused, I should have had a question mark above my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and read some reviews of it, and I was trying to think, well, I must have watched. I missed something here, missed the trick. And then that's when I watched the two Jakes, and they went back and watched Chinatown again.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't like it anymore?
I was less confused on the second one.
Right.
I was less confused. I mean, the first time I watched it, for the first 10 minutes, I kept expecting Jack Nicholson to burst into like a sarcastic rage, like he does in As Good As It Gets. So it took me 10 minutes to realise, like, no, he's not doing that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this isn't a romantic comedy.
No. I'm ashamed to say that I watched that. Can we cut that bit out?
Actually, that's a pretty funny movie, though.
I do enjoy it. I like that film a lot. My father-in-law made me watch that film, actually. He recommended it to me as a really good film. And it's to be fair, this is quite sad. This is another confession. That's probably in my top 10.
As good as it gets is in your top 10?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Interesting. What do you think of the soundtrack on this movie?
I liked it. I like that a lot.
I love it. I think it's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah, I bought it on vinyl. I listen to it occasionally. It's so good. I read
It's very atmospheric, and it looked fantastic.
I read a quote, or maybe a semi-quote, I'm not really sure, about Polanski, I guess, talking to the composer about how he wanted it to sound, and he's told him, I want it to sound like sex, but not good sex.
Oh my God, and there's the composer like, yeah, okay, man.
Right. And I just thought that was hilarious. Yeah.
I've got a tubular bell, what else?
But the soundtrack is fantastic, really, to me. I love that. I love the saxophones and everything. And it's got a great theme.
It's very atmospheric.
Yeah, it turned out pretty well. Something that did not carry over very well to the sequel was the soundtrack, unfortunately. But
yeah, agreed.
yeah, it seems like maybe they could have just repurposed some of the stuff for the second movie, but that's got its own 10-year history, 15-year history of issues we can talk about later. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm still floored that, you didn't like it. Not even a little bit. And you thought it was confusing and didn't like the, obviously the disgusting bits of it, but which is understandable. But I still think that the style, the acting, the cinematography, the script, everything about it, I just think is fantastic. It's so well made, in my opinion. So I know we can't please Carly all the time. Maybe we can't even please her most of the time.
Well,
unless we're watching some 39-step movie, but maybe a Bogart.
Or The Matrix.
Or The Matrix, yeah. We're not going to cover The Matrix on this podcast. It's not going to happen.
Be 2 hours of you moaning.
I didn't even like The Matrix when it originally came out.
How does it even go in their heads? I don't get it.
No, it wasn't. I totally got the movie. It's just I was a big fan of Dark City. And when I saw The Matrix, I was like, dude, they just ripped off Dark City. What is this? This is so dumb. And I wasn't like a huge Keanu Reeves fan. He's okay. He's fun to watch, but he's not like a great actor. So it wasn't, I was just like, it was just all style to me. And then there was another movie that came out before it too called The 13th Floor, which is also very similar to The Matrix. But, the one with the bigger budget and the better special effects is the one that's always going to be the one that's,
Sticks in memory.
Yeah. Oh, and there's the other one too, Existence.
With Jude Law.
Yeah, with Jude Law. Yeah, that was another sort of Matrix movie. I like all of them better than The Matrix. But, whatever. It's not that I don't like The Matrix. It's fine. But I wasn't as enamored with it as most people. I have this friend of mine, Matt, who actually is the composer for, Curious Case and Millennium After Millennium and other projects I've done. But I wouldn't say he is now, but he was the biggest Matrix fan. He would watch.
Oh my God, we need to have a conversation. I need to have a conversation with him.
He would watch that movie non-stop. I mean, I just was like, oh my God.
For one of my art projects in school, I did Neo dodging a bullet out of like paper mache.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Still got it. Street hates it.
Do you want to know
Still
more?
got it. No, they just kind of went, what's that? What do you mean, what's that? Who are you? The exam board will piss off. I mean, he's got no hand because it was about 20 years ago. He's got no hand and like his cape's bent, but whatever. It's obviously stood the test of time.
He has a cape?
Yeah, like his big long
his coat?
I did it like a cape though.
Okay. turning him into a
artistic
superhero.
license and all that.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Looks like Batman bending backwards without his mask.
Uh-huh. Before we get into the rating of this movie, Carly, I want you to pick what your favorite part of this film was.
Okay.
We already know what you hated. What's your favorite part of this film? Do this. What's your favorite part of the movie? And tell me how they could have made the movie better for you.
Okay. My favorite part of the movie is probably a little bit surprising. It's actually where he's in the barbers and he's having his like shave and whatever.
Uh-huh.
And that bloke tells him what trash he is.
Uh-huh.
And he yells at him for about 10 minutes. It's screaming in his face. That was my favourite part of the movie. I thought that was fun. I thought that was great.
So
no, I did, because he was totally right. He was like, you're calling me trash, man. People come to me when they're desperate. You're just kicking people out and making people desperate. Shut up. Is he irregular? Get him out. That's great.
Yeah, no, that was a good moment. That was kind of exposing a little bit of the underbelly of LA, and I think a little bit of paparazzi-ness and private investigators and splashing all that negative news on the newspapers and things like that. When, I mean, let's face it, Jack's not really the greatest guy in the world. All right. But he's not a bad guy either.
Yeah.
know?
He's not, he's probably got more morals than that banker, like he says.
Sure.
You don't give people mortgages, you turf people out.
Right. And he's not wrong.
Yeah.
And even back then, that's something to say. Nowadays it's like it's even more prominent, That's still very topical today. Well, cool. Yeah, I mean that's a great movie. What could they have done differently to make this movie amazing?
The thing is, that's kind of like, for me, that's a bit of a pointless question, because the only thing that I can...
It's not, because maybe Fincher's listening and Town's listening.
Don't put the incest in.
So they're like, well, yeah,
Listen, David.
You need to get over that. You just need to, because that's just the thing. It's just part of the story. Just, you got to overlook that kind of stuff. Watch the movie for what it is. It's not about incest.
Yeah, but that's the whole point of what I've said as to why I personally do not gravitate and rate films like that, because it's just something ingrained that for some reason it overrides anything else. I can see the merit. I can see every other aspect. I can see how it's fantastic, but just for me.
But then you should have been into the movie for the entire time until you found that out. Aha.
Well,
see, I think it's more than that. That's fine.
well,
I totally
not
understand.
massively, because I don't know. I don't know what I can put my finger on that to say. Like, this is the problem with classics. You're wrong if you don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, you're wrong, but you're not wrong because you don't like it. You're just wrong.
I just don't. That whole bit just kind of skewers.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't around when
rest.
this movie came out. I was,
Which is, again, it's what it's designed to do. It's meant to make you sort of reassess things and relook at things. So it worked.
Right.
I just didn't.
I mean, I
appreciate
guess what you're saying is probably the same way that I feel about movies like Old Boy or Audition or something. Like Old Boy, I thought was a fantastic movie, though. I wouldn't say I didn't like it. I liked it. I thought it was great. But it also carried that incest thing. And you don't find out until the very end of the movie. And I don't know if you've ever seen Old Boy.
No. Oh, wait, is that the horror? No, it's not.
Well, it's probably considered, it's a Japanese horror movie. I think it's Japanese, right? I can't remember. But it's not the remake with Josh. Josh, yeah. I think it was last name right now for whatever reason. From Goonies, the older brother in Goonies. I can't think of his name. Anyway, Josh Brolin.
Oh.
It's not the remake with him. It's the original one, right? Okay, so this guy gets kidnapped and he is put into this room and more or less like tortured. He's just kept there for like ever. And then eventually he gets, oh man, it's been years since I saw this, how this happened. A woman is now in the room. And anyways, he falls for her and they have sex and all this kind of stuff. And then he eventually gets out and he finds out that it's his daughter.
Oh, that's horrible.
It's one of those movies I'll never watch it again. That's the reason why my memory is a little sketchy on the ideas behind it. So I would never watch that movie again because it hits you in such a way. It's just so awful. But it was amazing. It's like so well made and so well done. And, you know, part of it is because I've only seen it once. My memory of it is a little sketchy how the events happen, but that's the idea behind it. For whatever reason, they're doing this to this guy. I can't remember if he did something to them. They're getting him back. If it's a revenge story or whatever it is, I can't remember. But, you know, it was just so WTF at the end of the movie. Like, yeah. Oh my God, are you kidding? It was just so gross. But I think maybe
it's the same kind of way that people don't like Leon because they don't like sort of the undertones.
Leon.
Oh,
no, definitely. I definitely think that, but they do that in kind of that's different though, because you're talking about your lead character, two of your lead characters, you know what I mean? That are willing participants. Right. And that's funny to me that you bring that up because you're okay with that one.
Yeah. Because.
And that blows me away. It didn't necessarily strike me as odd. So I could never see why people would say it was odd. But then I guess that's the beauty of cinema. What one person thinks is completely different to somebody else. So are you saying that you didn't notice those undertones in that movie? Or are you saying that it didn't strike you as odd for an older man and a younger girl?
It didn't necessarily strike me as odd the way it was presented.
Interesting.
I can see the undertones of why people wouldn't like that and wouldn't enjoy that film because of that. But then I sort of saw more in the individual characters and kind of saw how she could get fascinated by somebody that suddenly saved her from a situation.
Well, yeah, so but understanding
sort of passed by.
Understanding is not the same thing, though. It's like you know what I mean? Like just because you understand what they're thinking, like I get that, but that doesn't make it any better. That's like
I'm not advocating, by the way, stealing children from their house after they've been murdered. Their family's been murdered and taking them on an adventure to be a hitman. I'm not advocating that in any way. Just disclaimer.
All right. Okay. I'm not fully sure I've figured you out on this topic, but I'm also certain nobody ever will.
Oh, no, quite possibly no.
So yeah, I don't know.
It's weird. I'm very strange because like torture, I have a weird like view of watching torture in films and stuff like that as well. So
I mean, that sort of thing depends on how it's presented. Like I don't particularly like gore. I mean, I love horror films, but I don't like gore. Like I have a hard time watching it, especially if it's something that's realistic looking. If it's sort of cartoony over the top, like Friday the 13th or something like that, I can deal with it. But when you get into movies like, I don't know, stuff that just has realistic gore, I don't like it. It makes me sick to my stomach. I'm not fascinated with that stuff. I do not want to see people ripped to pieces. It's just so gross to me. But I don't mind to me, that's not fear. That's just gross. And I like the feeling of fear when I watch a horror film. I like, cause I know it's safe, I guess, in a way. So I like being scared. So I don't shy away from that stuff, but I really just don't like the gross gore stuff that looks realistic. It's just, I don't know.
See, I don't mind Saw. I can watch any Saw film and quite happily enjoy that. But if you were doing that stuff in somebody's house and that was a family, nope. I'm not making it past 10 minutes. No. It's very strange the way my brain works.
No, context matters. Like I get that. And that's the reason why I'm so blown away with your comparison to Leon. Because that is taking your
I'm just pulling it out the air.
No, but I mean, it's a good comparison. It's not a bad comparison. It has to do with your view of it, which I find interesting. Because Leon, you're taking your two lovable lead characters and you're creating a romance between them, even though their age difference is like 30 years, right? And that's like not okay.
But see, I never watched Leon as like a romance between them. Maybe that's it. Maybe I just watched it with like blinkers or
that's
something.
That's also really weird because I don't know how you could not. Like, I mean, that movie is a love story between those two. I don't know how you can, and especially after we've already done this movie on the podcast, I'm just like even further blown away.
No, I don't know. Well,
and then
I think it has a lot to do with like Jean Reno's character because he's almost a child himself.
But he's not though. I mean, I understand.
Oh no, I know he's not. He's a grown man.
His mentality might be childlike, but he's a grown ass man. He's that is not okay, and that's the reason why some people have a problem with it or they view it in a certain way because it's like it's blatant. It's not like it's not subtle. That movie is a love story between that man and that little girl. They might not ever do anything illegal, but that is still there. I mean, it's undeniable. As to where with Chinatown, we're taking the evil villain did something evil to his daughter and created this child. And so to me, that is more acceptable, way more acceptable because we're made to hate and dislike this person that did this evil, terrible thing. As to where Leon, it's much more difficult because we have these two very likable people.
It's presented as a sweeter sort of connection.
Yeah. Right. And so it makes it even worse because it's presented that way and in a way where it's like, it's romanticized.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a really good way to describe it. It's romanticized.
Yeah. And that's a very dangerous thing because that becomes a normal.
Yeah. The
more you do that, you romanticize those things that are not okay.
The more you make it acceptable on the surface.
Exactly. So I can 100% understand why Leon, the Professional is a fantastic movie. But I absolutely understand why.
I mean, it does make me uncomfortable, that scene where she's dancing around, dressing as
doing
pop
Madonna?
Yeah. That does make me uncomfortable. That's the only scene that I can say makes me uncomfortable. But
but that's that scene is the reason why Natalie Portman has a career because every boy saw that movie and was like, you know what I mean? And that's even worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then knowing that like these older men like Leon watching it, liking it is even worse. Like there's so much bad stuff that's in your face in that movie. It's not hard to understand why people feel that way. As with Chinatown, again, we're looking at a villain doing bad things to good people. So we're set up, we're already made to dislike and hate this person, so it's more digestible to see that and experience that because we're already going to hate him. It's not somebody that we like. Like if we saw Jack do that, that would be like a huge turnoff and nobody would love this movie. It'd be something completely different. Like if you're watching The Matrix and Neo does something like that, I'm like, it's going to, you don't do that to your lead characters because that, you can't make them that bad. So I can see that was a good movie to bring up to compare it to, but I'm still confused by your view of it, I guess.
Well, I like to remain an enigma. So,
yeah, which is okay. I mean, that's why art is subjective.
And like I said, this is only 2 watches. Maybe if I sit and watch it more, I'll actually be able to pinpoint what it is exactly. But that's the only thing that I can think is skewing me a little bit because I can recognize everything else that you're saying about it, but it's just not sitting right.
Yeah, and then that's totally fine. That's understandable, and I totally get that. If that's the reason, that's the reason. There's nothing wrong with that. It's more of the comparison between Leon and Chinatown, as Leon being acceptable and Chinatown not being acceptable. That blows me away. It's not the fact that you don't like Chinatown because it has the incest thing in it. That I get it. Like, I totally understand that. And that's, that's good enough for me. But yeah. So anyway, now that we fully explored that yuckiness, let's give this film a rating. So worried. I don't know what to like. It's
you
just rate it. You rate it what you need to rate it.
It's
okay,
a hard
don't worry.
One for me because
it's not. You just, if you don't like it, rate it a 0. Whatever it is that you need to do, just make it honest.
It's not a 0 film, though. It's not a 0 film.
But is it for you? This is your rating. What is this movie for you?
I'd probably put it as maybe a 6 for me.
I think that means a 4, right?
Hey!
You're too scared to give it a 5, which is in the middle ground, because it doesn't say whether you like it or don't like it. You don't want to give it a 4 because people will hate you. So you have to give it a 6 just to save face.
Everybody hates me anyway, so I don't really mind. Well, I'll tell you what then,
That's
we'll do 5.
That's not true.
We'll do 5 then, because I can acknowledge everything that everybody goes on about and raves about.
Yeah.
That's fine, but I didn't enjoy it, so
okay.
We'll go with a 5.
All right, as long as it's honest. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I love it. I think it's great. I give it a 10. I'd give it an 11 if I could.
25 million.
Yeah.
From Jason.
No, it's all around. It's just a great movie. The only possible downside to it is it does feel convoluted at the beginning, or at least the first like 30, 40 minutes. But that serves its own purpose. That convolution is its own character in this movie, I believe. And I love that fact because it's one of the very, very few films that exist where you follow this investigation like you're the detective. You're piecing clues together and you're seeing clues as our lead character sees it. And they don't always fit, and they lead to random, crazy other avenues that open up even more questions. And I just think that's just there's a brilliance in that screenwriting that, I mean, it deserved the Academy Award. And I don't think a lot of films that actually win fully deserve that. And I think this is one of them.
You telling me Titanic didn't deserve to win? You monster.
Well, I'm a monster then, because no, absolutely not. No, we know what should have won that year.
We do.
Yes. So yeah, I think this film is 100% deserved of its legacy, of its history, of its celebration of a piece of art. And it deserves a 10 to me. Yep.
Well, that's a shocker.
Not really. LA Confidential is fantastic, but you know, I also gave it a 10, but the difference between the two, and they're both neo-noirs. The difference between the two is you could look at LA Confidential and it could potentially feel like a forced noir. Like they're really trying to go for, whereas to me, Chinatown doesn't feel like that at all. It's a story being told. So to me, it's just a little bit different. It's a little more easy going in the noir side of things and the neo-noir side of things. But they're both 10 movies to me, you know, 10 gens out of 10, 10 gens out of 10. Did I get that right?
I don't. Not commenting.
All right. And I think what we're going to do right now, Carly, now that we've gotten that one out of the way, we're going to take a short little break, and then we'll get into our second half of this podcast. Sound good?
Sounds okay.
All right.